Hello, my name is Reid Paquin. I'm a research director with IDC Manufacturing Insights, and joining me today is Rob Sinfield, VP of Product with Sage X3. And today we want to discuss the topic of traceability and really the rising importance it has in a company's digital transformation journey. And to start off this discussion, I think that there's a competition aspect that's really driving a lot of change within manufacturing, distribution, retail, these types of companies and industries. There's more companies that have to compete for the same customer base, and differentiation is really the key point here. Another issue is the fact that consumer market expectations are rapidly evolving. There's unexpected disruption like COVID-19, and it's creating a challenge, but also an opportunity for companies to transform how they operate and serve these markets. And really, this is why digital transformation is now becoming and being viewed as imperative. And the recent IDC digital manufacturing study highlights the clear advantage that occurs over time for organizations that have embraced digital transformation. The performances between the two groups is an obvious difference between digital and non-digital. But I think another key point is if you focus on 2020, digital organizations felt the impact of disruption less than non-digital organizations, which had their lowest performance over the 6-year study. But I think the biggest takeaway is how the gap between the two groups only increases over time. So those companies that have already acted are reaping a lot of the benefits. And a question that non-digital companies have to ask themselves is how much longer can you wait? You really can't risk inaction with the business environment that we're in right now. So Rob, with that, I just wanted to get your thoughts. What are you hearing when you talk with customers from a digital transformation aspect and the importance going forward?
Well, first of all, thank you, Reid, for having me here and for talking to me today. It's really interesting what you've described about the impact of digital transformation and the impact that this is having on businesses. We've seen that manufacturing companies around the world are under massive pressure, not just from COVID, but as a result of macroeconomic changes across the globe, geopolitical changes with new trade zones. You look at what's happened with Brexit, things like that. They're having an impact on businesses. And trends like direct to consumer are also changing the way that manufacturers interact with end consumers, bypassing wholesalers. Now, at Sage, I think we have the benefit of scale. We have tens of thousands of customers who operate in the manufacturing space around the globe. And what we're seeing is a couple of things. First of all, customers asking us, what is digital transformation and how do we go about doing this? And really what it comes down to is, and the way that we describe it is, it's the process of taking existing processes and really automating those or digitizing those so that you remove you remove errors, you put improved controls in place, like traceability. Now, one of the other things that we're seeing is that companies that are starting on their digital transformation journey, they don't need to look huge. It doesn't need to be all-encompassing. Look at things like cloud experiences, the adoption of cloud technologies. Look at things like automation of previously manual processes or labor-intensive processes. The adoption of business intelligence and KPIs to track what's happening in the business is a really good way to start when looking at something like digital transformation.
Right, and the point that we both mentioned was around that market and customer expectation, and it's a very important point to keep in mind with this high focus from a customer satisfaction standpoint. The quality of products and just the quality and experience of interacting with a consumer or a brand, it's really essential to success, and this is really where traceability comes into play. And traceability, it's the process that provides all of the relevant data and data relationships for the materials, ingredients used in the production and the distribution of finished products and goods. And the reason why traceability is so important, it's pretty clear anytime there's a recall. The cost of a recall really goes well beyond the expense of replacing a product or customer order. There's regulatory fines and penalties that can be incurred. There's the impact from the damage of a product's potential use. But one of the things that's most impactful that we see is from a brand name, a brand trust perspective. It only takes one incident to really tarnish that for a very long time. If you're in automotive or food and beverage, these types of industries really know the pain of this recall aspect because these are regularly occurring events with varying levels of severity. But it's something that they think about every day. Now, while I mentioned that compliance piece, that's essential, and many are viewing traceability as the way to maintain that compliance. What companies need to start doing is thinking beyond this and ask how additional value can really be driven through traceability. And the way that IDC is seeing companies do this is by progressing on what we call the 5-stage IDC traceability maturity model. The first I just mentioned, it's that compliance-focused approach. You're fulfilling the bare minimum to operate within a particular market. The second is where you start going beyond compliance and focusing on responding faster to an event to reduce the potential impact. The third maturity level, it's about making that process more efficient. Making more targeted recalls, experiencing less downtime from investigations, and facing lower recall process costs overall. The fourth stage, this is where that operational excellence piece becomes more of a focus, where you can start analyzing all of this data that you have access to, generating insights from it, and optimizing processes and overall performance. But the fifth and final stage, this is really where that competitive differentiation piece is generated from a customer experience, a brand loyalty perspective. And this is really accomplished by demonstrating that you're a reliable supplier, a trustworthy brand. I'd like to get your thoughts here. What are you hearing in your conversations around traceability and value?
So, Reid, it's such an interesting area, this. I think traceability is becoming incredibly more important to consumers and to businesses. People want to know where the ingredients are coming from that are used to make things, as I've said. The other reason why I think traceability is so important is that if you look at the internal processes that within an organization, if you have better traceability, you can improve things like, yes, customer satisfaction for sure, but you can be more efficient in your processes. You can look at things like shelf life management. So do you manage your batches in the most effective way? You can look at do I have the best supply chain from a sourcing perspective? Do I continuously have problems with one supplier versus another supplier? And you can then make an effective decision about, is it worth spending a little bit more versus something else? All of that contributes to better customer experiences and improvements across the board. A real example of this is a customer of ours called Playdale Playgrounds, who make the playgrounds that children will spend their time on. So all of the equipment that goes into the playgrounds, they build and manufacture themselves. So you want that to be safe. I know I definitely want that to be safe if my kids were playing in that playground. Now, one of the things that Playdale have sort of spoken to us about is that since implementing digital systems and getting a better control over their traceability, they've actually seen an 18% reduction in defects and complaints in just 1 year. As a result, customer satisfaction goes up, they have way less recalls. And that's an example of a discrete manufacturer. If you look at process manufacturing, we have a company that we work with who are a family-owned business called Ara Food Corporation. Now, they manufacture a wide variety of different types of snacks and things like that. And what they've done is through access to real-time information, they've actually been able to improve customer service and drive sales and things like that, but improve visibility into traceability, sort of real-time visibility into traceability, has also seen them benefit from a reduction in raw material waste, amounting to at least 1.5% in the first 6 months, because they had better insight into the different batches that they're working with. That's the sort of benefits that we're starting to see from our customers. So Reid, tell us about how traceability kind of is can enable change, and how should we be looking at traceability from an organizational perspective?
It's all about being able to easily access accurate information in real time. That's key to enable traceability. And with that, the reality though is that there's a lot of businesses that are siloed, in particular in manufacturing, and that's generally one of the big roadblocks that a lot of these companies encounter. In fact, from recent research, we see that from a manufacturing perspective, the most often approach is manual processes or spreadsheets when it comes to traceability. And I think the main point here is that all of this data needs to be used for traceability purposes. But first you have to make sure it's digitized, available, and you can share it across the entire organization, not within a particular silo. And when you're doing root cause analysis, you don't want to run into missing data, incomplete data. It's frustrating and it just causes delays. And really what we're seeing leaders do is automate this traceability process through software so that they can ensure that they have continued success. And really this allows those leading companies to really take a more proactive approach when it comes to traceability. And it's this proactive approach that delivers those more value-add benefits that you just listed as some of the examples. So Rob, those are, that's one of the main points that I see when it comes to enabling traceability. What are you seeing from a solution standpoint? What do companies need to do?
So it might sound strange coming from a solution provider or a vendor, but the adoption of technology doesn't actually guarantee success. It doesn't mean that you're going to see these significant numbers of improvement. There's a requirement to actually change existing processes, to think about cultural changes across the organization. And we see that companies that are looking to adopt things like traceability, they will actually need to make some changes there. But the great thing about modern ERP and business management solutions like Sage is that we allow these businesses to implement new types of automation and improve the way that they're recording information. So getting new digital controls, track and trace, and much better visibility across their supply chain. This, in turn, allows us to have way more confidence in the data that we're getting access to. So a really good example of a place to begin is with Playdale Playgrounds, again, who we saw had already had significant improvements just by implementing traceability controls. But they also looked at how do they reduce the number of errors? How do they improve their data accuracy? And one of the things that they've done is they've implemented data collection and barcode scanning on the shop floor. And this has actually improved shop floor efficiency by about 11.8%. You factor that in over a number of years, and it's a fairly significant improvement. Lester's Foods is another example of where implementing new types of capabilities has really helped them grow their business. So since implementing Sage, Lester's Foods have actually been able to track every element of their production process. This really helps them to manage their regulatory compliance. It helps them to support food safety standards, but it also strengthens their management control. So the different parts of the businesses are no longer acting like silos. They're acting as one single entity. And Lester's have seen a number of benefits from that, and the numbers kind of grow and grow as you go forward, as you've seen from the 6-year study that you've published. A really interesting example is a food and beverage manufacturer called Heredad de Monte Agudo, and I apologize if I didn't do that name any justice, but they operate under a number of complex food and safety standards that require them to not only track all of the ingredients and everything that goes into the food, but they also need to track things like preventative maintenance schedules. They need to be able to track clean down operations, because with the help of Sage, and again with the help of a modern ERP solution, connecting to government portals to track this information is now no longer a huge task. It's a fairly simple task. But what's clear to see is that all of these businesses have seen huge improvements through the introduction of traceability enabled by digital transformation projects. The benefits range from things like cost control through to reductions in recalls, improvements to quality, significant uplifts in sales, improved customer satisfaction. And of course, that's what everybody wants from these types of projects. So thank you, Reid, for sharing this very valuable information with us today.
No, thank you, Rob, for joining me, and thank you, everyone, for watching.